the 14th to 18th century. So that's comparatively recently. And the scapegoating mechanism, incidentally, there, also at play, which is very important, is the same exact mechanism that surfaces later than in the 20th century with the genocide. In that case, it's the Jews, a particular race was singled out as being the scapegoat. And in the earlier Inquisition, which has exactly the same pattern of the patriarchal power structure imposing this, picked the women as being the scapegoat at the time. Hopefully, one of the things that has to happen is that we can go beyond the need for scapegoating and take responsibility for our own growth and learning.
And embedded in all the monotheistic texts are the mention of women as creatures, so she has to be controlled.
Right, right. And Francis Bacon, who initiated the experimental method in science, talked about nature actually having to be violated. We have to force her secrets from her by force, by violence. It's sort of rapacious and
used the metaphor of the
language.
torture.
The torture. You have to torture nature to get out of here her secrets. Whereas true science, see, there is a true science. Much of what we call science is not true. There are a few individual scientists who are true scientists. They are the true, like alchemists, they are lovers of nature. Like Albert Hoffman is a lover of nature. And he who loves nature and approaches nature with love and loving understanding is given nature's secret as a gift, as a grace, as a gift, which is why he was given it.
Yeah. One question on types of hallucinogens. You mentioned with psilocybin that was good for sex. And mescaline. Right.
That's also good for sex.
It's also, they're all good for sex.
I've seen the Yankees dance, and they take mostly peyote, which has mescaline in it, which is near methamphetamine. What about scopolamine? What does that do to you? And what about DMT? What does that emphasize in the drink?
Well, I mean, it's good that these questions are asked. The real source of information is largely folkloric in our own culture because, of course, we live in a society where research is not allowed. So it's all underground and clandestine. But you ask about scopolamine. Scopolamine is, along with L-hyl-cyamine and other things, the active ingredient in Jimson weed, which, because of Carlos Castaneda and the practices of brujeria in Mexico, is well known as a psychoactive plant. It certainly is psychoactive, whether it is psychedelic or not.
Maybe more like madness?
It's a kind of delirious frenzy. You go between delirium and frenzy, and you have a great deal of trouble remembering. It's what's called state-bounded. If you try to from my own point of view, if I were to try to describe the ideal shamanic plant, what it would do, it would not interfere with the short-term and long-term memory. It would clear your system very quickly, and it would be highly visionary. I am, I guess, just the kind of personality that values vision. So I really think it's weird when people say they took drug X and it was wonderful, and you say, well, did you hallucinate? And they say, well, no. Well, then what was so wonderful about it? I mean, there must have been something, a feeling. But for me, what is fascinating is just the indole hallucinogens, this very small family, which includes psilocybin, LSD, ibogaine, harmaline and harmine, the beta-carbolines. Did I say DMT? Yeah, and that's it. Not even mescaline, which marks me as a kind of Calvinist in some people's books.
But I always wonder why the Yankees could dance so long, and it's really amazing.
It's because it's an amphetamine, but these indole hallucinogens. What we're trying to get out here is we're trying to appear to be sane and rational people, so we don't seize you by the lapels and shake you. But what we're trying to get out here is that these things contain something that our art, our history, our literature, our religion did not prepare us for. And it appears to be an alien god, an unknown dimension, the edge of our ideological world in some way. Big excitement, not prolonged erection or enhanced memory or ability to rave all night or ability to recall instances of molestation in your childhood which may or may not have even occurred. But something else, something really transcendental, completely astonishing, and that as a rationalist, I think we have no right to expect that it exists. Most people don't know that it exists. People go from birth to the grave and never have the faintest inkling that there are these things in the environment which can just turn them upside down, set elves crawling through your drawers and jumping out of... I mean, really, reality just comes apart. If you've never had that experience, be assured that you could. A lot of people live their lives in the faith that there is no Santa Claus. Well, I've got news for you.
One thing I might add about scopolamine is that scopolamine and atropine and hyoscine, which are derived from these nightshades, Solanaceae nightshades, were important psychoactives in the witches, which is the European medieval shamanic tradition, and they seem to produce a kind of the visionary, but different than the psilocybin or indole tryptamine kinds of visions, accompanied by a kind of like a twilight sleep, what brain researchers refer to as a theta state, just before sleep, where you get these kind of images, that you get a sequence of images like dreamlike, and then you kind of fade out. You go into sleep, which is why, and then you may wake up again and have a few more images, and your body feels very heavy and kind of asleep, and yet you're having these visions. It's interesting that so there is that sense of confusion. You're not quite sure, did you see this, did you dream it, what was it, that kind of thing. And because it's, you know, it's a detachment from the body, it used to, scopolamine was quite commonly used in childbirth. The generations of women gave birth to children while in this kind of delirial twilight sleep state.
It was also used by the SS as a truth serum because they thought they could extract information.
In that state.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can we talk about ego game?
Oh, here, this guy.
In a recent article, the same magazine that Ralph mentioned, Terence, your mushroom article, Ralph Metzner wrote an article along with another person whose name I don't recall on MDMA, and my sense was that you, Ralph, pretty much extolled the virtues of MDMA for experiences in the generic kind that we're discussing here today. Terence, you give criteria when you talk about what you think are useful criteria for substance selection, in terms of what you think would be helpful for people that are interested in choosing or knowing the plants or knowing the substances that they're be interested in for consciousness expansion or etc. I just wonder if you both could comment on what you think about MDMA. It's had a lot of press. There seems to be certain camps that think it has a great virtue, and some people feel that it's just an excuse to take amphetamine.
The yuppies cocaine.
Do you want to go first?
By the way, you go first.
Oh, no, you go
Give
first.
him the bad news. You give him the bad news, I'll give him the good news.
Well, it's a complicated question, and so I will give a complicated answer, which is the only answer that is true. First of all, it's a moving situation. Research is going on constantly. A couple of years ago, the question was, is MDMA good or bad? Now I think, although Ralph may disagree, the question has become, how bad is it? You have to talk, first of all, about the psychoactivity and then the physiological activity. The psychoactivity seems entirely salutary. People report tremendous breakthroughs